Oh, I called it. Didn't want to be trying to run with it.
Now is the goddamn. What do I start with this morning?
To start with, we're going to do a whole bunch of nice updates and give you lots of activities and give you a chance to talk to them.
And you're going to be keying over what?
Yeah, as usual.
I don't think I need...
30 seconds.
Good morning. A busy morning this morning. First of all, I've got good news for all single women living in the city of Vancouver who are fearful of rapists. And after yesterday morning's program, I'm glad to tell you that the Vancouver Police have changed their method of covering during changes of shifts. You remember the woman couldn't get help, fearful of a rapist, because the police were going through a shift change in Vancouver? That's going to change. And I'm also going to raise a very interesting point and ask this provocative question. Are citizens on the streets of Vancouver to be protected efficiently against common assault by the Vancouver City Police Department? Or are we getting back to the bad old days where tow truck drivers accept their authority, whatever that is, in a most unusual and violent manner without anything happening thereafter? And then I'm going to ask a couple of questions about the BC Police Commission and its handling of the Delta affair. How little we really know. I'm going to give you a little comment on the won't go away Wendy King case. And we're going to meet a man from Elliot Lake, Ontario, a Steelworkers Union official, who's going to cheer us up with news about uranium and working in its orbit. After the break.
What's the order of the freeze frames, Michelle?
Got to know.
Okay, hold on. Go, now start. What's this? Rape lady, freeze frame?
Mm-hmm.
You'll take it when you refer to her? Wendy King?
Right.
When you refer to her by name?
Mm-hmm.
Delta Police?
It's not Smith, is it?
It's not Smith, is it? No.
Here's your copy here.
And the Aquatic Centre.
And then the Aquatic Centre.
I'll probably get the Aquatic Centre after the break. Mm-hmm.
You'll probably do the Aquatic Centre after the break. What the fuck are you asking me for then? You already know. 15 seconds. In 10.
I'm glad to tell you there are occasions when the proper publicity brings action from bureaucratic bodies. This occasion I'm talking about the Vancouver City Police Force. Yesterday morning we gave you a Webster report on a terrified woman whose name we did not use, who at 6 o'clock in the morning was very worried about a persistent caller on the apartment intercom who wanted to get into her apartment. She called the police. The police didn't respond. They phoned back some minutes later and said, sorry, we're in a change of shift and other high priorities. We can't come to you for the moment. Why don't you get help from somebody down the hall? At that time, the weird character outside was still hammering away at the intercom and scaring the woman half to death. Fortunately, there was no rape. Immediately after the program, however, an inspector of the Vancouver City Police Department phoned the woman who had been on the program, apologized many times for the way her call had been handled and gave her the explanation again, that there was a breaking and entering in progress in the West End at that particular time, and some cars had been peeled off to cover it. And they had not been able to attend. In fact, they got there at 6:53, I think it was, when the woman had managed to get help and managed safely to leave the apartment and get to her work. However, I spoke to the inspector myself, and he said that as a result of this problem on change of shift, by the way, the policeman did apologize and say that he was sorry it had happened. It was kind of unfortunate. The drill now in Vancouver City Police is that when the day shifts come on, the morning shifts come on, and what they call Patrol North, which is 312 Main Street, and Patrol South, which is out at Oak Ridge, the dispatchers will be informed of any overload of calls, and they will go directly to the corporals who are assembling the shift to go out at 6 a.m. In other words, this gives a better backup and won't repeat the kind of ludicrous situation which happened to the woman we interviewed on the program, whereby, fearful of rape, she is told by an operator from the police department, sorry, we can't come, change of shift. And I sincerely trust the Vancouver Police Department makes sure that the proper priorities are followed when cars are being dispatched. I sometimes wonder. A breaking and entering in progress may need some cars, but with the number of rapes, there was another one in the East End about 48 hours ago, and the continuing advocacy of the police that if you're in doubt about weird characters, strange incidents, call the police. They certainly have been keeping up to the community relations advice to the woman alone in a house or an apartment. That's a step in the right direction. Now, I'm going to tackle another topic, and that is the topic of, what's up next, Michelle? Wendy King. I don't want to harp on the Wendy King too long or too much, but one can only talk about these things while they are topical. As a result of the Wendy King affair, as you well know, a man who was the Chief Justice of the Court of Appeal of British Columbia, implications of that affair, is no longer in that position. We have gone through all the legal machinations of the Wendy King affair. She has been given $1,500 fine, 200 hours community work, and 9 months probation. Probably a very suitable sentence. But I must restate my objection as an interested citizen and observer to the fact that the files, the exhibits of books and transcripts in the Wendy King case are still sealed. In other words, we do not really know what happened. We cannot make a judgment about who were the other members from the highest level of society who were apparently customers of this particular body house. I know this much, that from what little I've read in the public prints, it would seem that there's almost evidence for additional charges to people who used the services. If you go back to Larry Still's story, you will see that there were some customers who phoned up and wanted other women. You know, that in my simple layman's non-legal mind is very close to the offense of procuring a woman for the purpose of prostitution. And that is a very serious matter. I do not know if such charges would be justified or against whom they would be justified, because I can't read the transcripts presented in court in public evidence, not read in detail, and now sealed, it would seem, forever and a day. I don't think I'll go any further than this, except to try and make those in authority realize that the administration of justice and its repute has suffered enough blows in the past year in British Columbia. The judges affair at high level and at the lower level, and what I still prefer to call the magistrates' courts. And yet we're allowed to sit and wonder. The one thing we should not wonder is about the caliber of the people who may be involved in the highest level of society, to quote the prosecutor Bruce Donald. We still don't know. The files are sealed, and with all the respect I can summon, I think that is a bad decision against the public interest and will lead to the proliferation of unhappy and probably untrue rumours throughout the province of British Columbia. Why don't the authorities learn the lesson? Justice must not only be done, it must be seen to be done. Not finished yet. I'll be back after this break.
Send it a segment as well, I think, Jack.
Yes, I've got to.
Yeah, he has to do
Now,
the quiet center this time.
And how was that, love? Did you watch it? Strong enough?
Very strong, yeah. Didn't need the picture, Wendy.
Send her in somewhere after that, okay? Yeah, 15 seconds, stand by.
I may not even bother doing. This is in the way of another update. I've received a number of telephone calls from people in Delta who want to know what the BC Police Commission report said in fact about the operation of Delta Police. We all know that the Chief Constable happily has been cleared. There are, however, aspects about which I am still concerned. So yesterday I spoke to the chairman of the BC Police Commission, Mr. McQueen, and asked if it would be possible to release the copy of the report. He said no, it was commissioned by the Attorney General, Mr. Gardam, in certain terms of reference, and that all that had been released at that time was a press release, as I recall, from the Attorney General himself. I then contacted the Attorney General, and I have asked the Attorney General if it would be possible, taking out matters still under active investigation, because there are a number of officers under active investigation in connection with certain incidents at the lower levels in the force, for that to be released. He was hesitant about it, but is considering it. I also spoke to Mayor Burnett of Delta and said people are concerned, while they're happy about certain aspects of the clearance of the chief, etc., 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 they don't know what was in the BC Police Commission. We've had no assessment of the administrative standards of the Delta Police Force, and goodness knows it was under enough fire. And is it not correct, Mr. Mayor, I said, or what's that effect, that the public is entitled to see all the relevant parts of the BC Police Commission investigation with specific reference to the administration aspects of the force? Wanted to tell you this on the air this morning because I don't want you to think that merely because a BC Police Commission secret report has been done and submitted, that we, the public, again, it's our right to know, will accept simple press releases from the Attorney General as the be-all and end-all of the situation, or for that matter from Mr. Burnett, I think, to be more scrupulously accurate. And as soon as I get responses from Mr. Burnett and perhaps the Attorney General, I will let you know if we're going to be denied or allowed the right to see what's in the BC Police Commission inquiry into the Delta Force. Now I come to another one, in which I am already at solid odds with the top brass of the Vancouver City Police Department. And I said on the air this morning, what protection is there for the ordinary citizen from an assault on the streets? Are we going to get back to the bad old days of confrontation between tow truck drivers and decent, respectable, ordinary citizens? I am beginning to wonder. An incident happened at 11:30 last Saturday morning at this place. And this place is the Aquatic Centre on Beach Avenue in Vancouver. And the car in the lower left hand is not the car involved, but a man whom I know parked his car slightly in the wrong place there. He was waiting for the car in front to move. A tow truck driver came along and indicated that he must move. My unimpeachable witness did not move. He was waiting for the car in front to move. Later, the tow truck went down into the Aquatic Centre area of the parking lot, and we're simulating the move of the tow truck just now, and then it came out again. And it came out again. When it came out, and I've taken a very careful statement on this, the tow truck driver stopped behind this citizen's car, which may or may not have been quite properly parked, and said to him, this is the tow truck driver, this is not a police officer, and said to him, obscenity, move your vehicle, it's parked illegally. Move or you'll be towed away. The old caper, the tow truck driver looking for business, and the citizen wondering if he's parked all right. After an exchange of hostility between the two individuals involved, the tow truck driver, I am informed, got out of his truck and came up to the citizen. He was at the driver's side of the car with his door open. And the tow truck driver, according to my witness, said, unless you park your car properly, I'll tow your car away. The tow truck driver was told he was not a peace officer, nor was he ever likely to become one, and he couldn't talk to the public like that, and he couldn't tow cars away arbitrarily. The tow truck driver said, I'll phone the police, and the complainant said, you do that. The complainant then tells me, and I believe what he tells me, that he reached into his car for something, his athletic kit. He was punched in the back from behind hard and collapsed into the car. He got up, turned around. The driver was going back to his truck. He went back to his car to get a piece of paper and pencil, and as he was standing in front of the tow truck to take down the number, the driver revved up his engine heavily, and he backed away to the side. He wondered what was happening. The driver then, I am told, and I have an independent witness as to this, not merely the complainant, the driver then drove his vehicle straight at the citizen. Struck him a glancing blow with the fender, hit him with the truck mirror, and the citizen was jammed up against his vehicle, leapt out the way, and survived. The truck driver from the towing company did not stop. Now, a passerby called the police. A woman got out of a car to express her horror and amazement, and I've spoken to that woman, and she says that tow truck driver should be charged at least with hit and run. What happened? Along came the police. Two very nice chaps, I'm told, took statements, and then they tell the citizen, if you want a charge to be laid, go down and sign an information at the Justice of Peace office at 222 Main Street. After my friend had had treatment for his injury on his back, he went down and said to the JP, I don't want to sign an information. I want to know if a charge has been laid by the police. Oh, no, said the JP. You'll have to go over to 312 Main for that. My friend goes to see the constable and says, has a charge been laid in my case? No, says the policeman, you'll have to go and sign an information. I want to see the corporal. Half an hour later, the corporal says, no, we don't lay the charge. You go sign the information. Another half an hour later, he sees an inspector. No, we don't lay the charge. You sign the information. We will report it, however, said the inspector. We'll report it to those people who investigate tow trucks on the police department. A charge has not been laid. Deputy Chief Stewart tells me this is normal procedure. Certainly there are times when a citizen, to show his bona fides, must sign the information, often cases of husband and wife assaults where she wants to lay a charge and drops it the next day, and in minor incidents. I am assured this is normal police procedure. If it is totally wrong and it better be changed. If that man had been lying dead after the tow truck had hit him, or in hospital with brain concussion, is there to be no arrest, no summons, no charge until the information is signed? Well, of course, the Deputy Chief said, well, if it's a case like that, the police will lay the charge. If they, they've seen what happens, if they were witnesses to the offense, or if it was a serious one. I can't think of anything more serious. And this is a procedure which is developing, has developed over some time in the city of Vancouver, which means that you don't get the instant protection for which you pay from your police department. I'm not concerned with stories about where we want to cut down court time, or we want to do this or we want to do that. If I am struck by a tow truck driver in my kidneys, and if he tries to run me down with my vehicle, I want the police to investigate that forthwith, and if not arrest, at least issue a summons on their probable cause and belief that an offence has taken place. But it would seem to me, I was quite astonished by Bob Stewart's attitude on this morning. I can understand why citizens have to sign information on minor matters. But on major matters, what have we got here? We've got assault, and we've got hit and run, to say the least. And a citizen has to get up from his sick bed, you might say, if he wants a charge laid, go down and sees a succession of policemen, all of whom give him the brush off on the grounds that this is normal procedure. Well, I don't accept that procedure in any way, shape, or form. Whether the police are doing it for administrative convenience or otherwise, we, the public, when the police are called to an assault or a hit and run in which they have witnesses, in this case 3 people, for them to turn around and put the onus of the individual in starting the process to bring the accused person to justice is, I don't want to say hogwash, is not good. I'm going to talk to you about this on the air this morning too. We're going to have some time for some telephone calls this morning. I may too bring the individual himself who was involved in this fracas onto the program tomorrow morning. He wasn't recognized. He was a well-known man. Quite well-known, I would say, to say the least. I hope I've made my point clear. 1, I'm always afraid of towing companies. 2, I get nervous when the police say, we're not going to take any action, even if we do believe there were a couple of offences, unless you hie yourself down to 222 Main Street and sign an information. What are the police for? If they're not there to investigate instantly and lay the charges on their probable cause and belief. In my view, it's an avoidance of the public duty and is not a satisfactory state of affairs. Bad enough yesterday when they didn't respond to the woman who was petrified because they were in the middle of a change of shift. Police attended here quickly enough and did their investigation. Kaput, finito, done. Ain't right. After the break. Sensitive nerve this morning. It seems I have touched a very sensitive nerve already this morning, which seems to indicate to me that I'm on the right track. I got an irate phone call during the commercial break from an official in the, what do you call these fancy new offices? I don't know. Let's call it the prosecutor's office anyway, which he says I am totally wrong, and that in, for instance, rape cases, the informant must sign the complaint in case she changes her mind later. I can well understand in certain rape cases, not all rape cases, where that would be a good precaution. I can well understand too that in certain cases that the complainant must sign the information. But what I'm telling you is a fact. Here is an assault at 11:30 on a Saturday morning. The complainant, for one reason or another, does not sign the information. I, as a layman, would think the police were there to protect me. I'm beginning to wonder. Here we are the following, what day is it? Wednesday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. No charge laid. Now let me put this to the gentleman who phoned me from the prosecutor's office. Suppose and I regard this as a serious case. Supposing this happens to pick tow trucks who've been a thorn in the side of the people of Vancouver for Lord knows how many years. Supposing this happens 6 times a week. I'm being hypothetical. And we have 6 cases of people who have been assaulted by tow truck drivers. And for reasons of time, money, job, or anything else, the complainants do not sign an information. Does that mean that such assaults go unchecked on the city streets forever and ever and ever and ever and ever and ever. What the devil are the police for? If I am the complainant and I am injured, I might not willing to go to court on it because one, I'm leaving for Hawaii tomorrow. That's my problem. It's my duty as a citizen to attend and on a summons to give evidence against the man whom I'm complaining of assaulting me. If you have this kind of laissez-faire administration of justice, where it's up to the individual, the person assaulted, decide whether there is going to be a court case, you could finish up with anarchy. And I'm not overstating the point. The trouble with lawyers and policemen is they get hung up in budgets and bureaucracy and the most administratively easy way to do things. We, the ordinary people, and I defy any non-lawyer to disagree with me, we, the ordinary people, when there is a crime committed on the streets of Vancouver, do not wish the enforcement of the law to be subject to the whim of the complainant. We expect the police, where there is evidence, to take the action, not to put it on the shoulder of the citizen who may be scared witless, penniless, too busy to bother about going to court. And you build up a disrespect for the law. And then when you go down and say, have you charged this man? You go sign the information. I want to see the corporal. No, go sign the information. The inspector, go sign the information. I think it's abominable. And I will not, unless someone produces some cogent arguments, back down from my situation that where there are witnesses to an assault or a hit and run on the streets of Vancouver, if the complainant is not willing to sign it, the police should lay the charges. Go to the phones after the break.
Oh, they died yesterday. They died yesterday, I'll tell you like.
It's on. This is very bad for my blood pressure, but nevertheless, we will push ahead. What have I talked about this morning? There's nothing to talk about in Delta. I'm merely attempting, for the sake of the public knowledge, to get a hold of certain segments of the BC Police Commission report so we know what has been done. Wendy King case, I've made my point twice. We don't need to hammer that one. On the police case, I must thank the police for acting so promptly after we drew forcibly to their attention the fact that women in Vancouver were virtually unprotected without police help during change of shifts, if there happened to be a B&E in progress or whatever else. This last point I consider to be vitally important. If I am wrong, I'd love to be proven I am wrong. My thesis is we hire and pay the police well. They're well paid nowadays. Excellent conditions to enforce the law on the streets of Vancouver and to make sure the proper charges are laid whether or not the complainant wants to lay the charge. And that's what my irate friend in the prosecutor's office doesn't seem to understand. I happily am not confused by too deep a knowledge of the law. I know perfectly well that the common understanding of the ordinary person is that if somebody beats them to the devil on a public street, in any other case, the majesty of the law will move in, investigate, put out a warrant, a summons, pick up the guy, take him to jail, have him in front of the JP and let him out on bail. That's the way we think it works. We are wrong, it would seem, in the city of Vancouver. That it's, you're lying dying with a knife wood in your hand. I'm exaggerating. Knives. Do you want to charge, you want to sign an information at the JP's office? What kind of nonsense is that? Now, I'm exaggerating for the purpose of demonstration. Am I going to go home or take phone calls? Go ahead, please.
Morning, Webster.
Yes.
How are you today?
Don't waste time.
Okay, about this issue of this fella being attacked in a parking lot and almost...
In the public street, not in the parking lot.
I understood it was in the parking lot. Whatever.
No.
I think that's crazy. If he was hit from the back while he was reaching in his car, did I get that part?
That's correct.
Is this person a government official?
This person is a lawyer in town.
And you're going to have him on the show tomorrow?
Tomorrow morning.
I'll be waiting to see him. By the way, I have had problems with tow truck drivers. I've been towed away.
Don't tell me about problems with tow truck drivers. I thought it had been all cleaned up and everything was copacetic. It would appear not.
It looks to me like they're the police and the tow truck.
No, none of that, please. None of that. That's the kind of thing I want to avoid. The bad old days with tow truck drivers. Go ahead. It's my understanding, and I checked with the best authority in town on it this morning, Harry Rankin, and I'm not joking. A tow truck driver cannot take your car from a public place without the authority of the police. But the whole attitude of this driver, according to the witnesses, was, move your car or I'll have it towed away. He is not a police officer. Go ahead, please. Hello.
Hello?
Yes.
Good morning, Mr. Webster.
Yes.
I had a similar, or slightly similar thing happen to me, except that instead of being a tow truck, it was a yellow cab.
Yeah, but I'm concerned with the procedures after that. Were you told you'd have to sign the information yourself?
Well, I was advised not to do anything
Why not?
because the police officer that I asked said that, look, it's not that important about what happened. You know, I could have been killed, and he said it wasn't important.
What happened to you?
Well, I'm a disc jockey at a local club in town here, and I'd called a cab when I'd finished my shift. When the cab came, one of the dancers who also works at the hotel had apparently called a cab too. So I said, okay, you take this first cab. I'd opened the back door and had my hand in the handle of the door. The driver suddenly turned around, uttered an obscenity, and said, I'm not waiting for this, and floored the gas pedal while I still had a hold of the door handle and the door was wide open. Now, I got pulled very hard, as you can imagine, and my hand I was just lucky I got my hand out of the door handle because I could have been dragged down underneath the rear wheel.
Anyway, the police came and said, don't bother about it.
Well, what happened was that I didn't call the police. I talked to a police officer the following day.
Not the same thing, but I appreciate your problem. Go ahead, please.
Yes, Judge. This is regarding an information I gave the police. My car was struck by a bullet at 23rd and Oak Street. I live 2 blocks away from there. This is 5 years ago. I phoned the police 20 minutes afterwards and informed them about that. They said they'd send somebody up. I waited. They came not. They didn't come that day. I phoned the next day and I asked them again. They told me, well, I would have to come down and lay an information on it.
5 years ago, things presumably have changed since then for the better.
Uh-huh.
But nobody was killed. There was a bullet hole in your car. May have been done by kids as a prankster. You should have gone down.
It was just a 22, you know, but...
Fair enough. I don't regard that as a matter in which the police should, unless somebody's sniping, but if it's just a damage by somebody or other. Go ahead, please.
Hi, I got a similar case of my older sister who is retarded, called me up one evening. I was sitting at home in terror. There was somebody trying to get in her 1-bedroom apartment. So I immediately hung up and called the Burnaby RCMP. And then I called back to her and tried to calm her down and keep her calm. And, about 5 minutes later, the guy's still trying to get in, banging at the door. I could hear him over the phone even. And it took altogether 20 minutes for the police to get there.
How long ago was that?
This is about, just at the time of the enumerations.
Well, they did better than the Vancouver police. The Vancouver police took close on an hour to get to the other woman.
But this still, there was a
Because
man.
they were on a change of shift.
This was a man right at her door trying to force his way in.
Did you go down to the RCMP and express your objections?
I phoned them. I talked to the corporal that came to her finally, and I complained to him about that. I said I could have gotten there faster myself, and I lived in Vancouver. And they didn't say too much about that.
My advice when you have a complaint about the action of the police is to put the dashed thing in writing. We got that story about the woman yesterday who was petrified because she wrote to BC Police Commission, I think it was, with a copy to me. And as soon as I saw the copy of the letter, I said, Brian, get the woman. If you have a legitimate complaint about, and I'm not knocking all policemen, as they well know. I've been so friendly to the police for years, perhaps I've been too friendly. But if you have a complaint, Don't sit and whine about it. Go down and see the officer commanding the detachment, if it's the RCMP, and if you don't get satisfaction from him then and there, write a letter to RCMP headquarters in Victoria with a copy to the detachment commander, whoever he may be. Or write to Chief Constable Winterton with a copy to the BC Police Commission.
I'd like to say
And a
something.
copy to Webster. Much obliged. You know, we don't know. We can't do anything about it. We can allow these sloppy habits to develop without doing anything about it. And we're the ones who can jack them up. Don't you ever kid yourself. If we do it properly and responsibly. I'm not looking for trouble with the police department. But if trouble comes my way, too bad. Go ahead, please.
Hey, Mr. Webster.
Yeah.
Yes, I had somewhat the same thing happen to my wife as happened to that fellow that tow truck.
Mm-hmm.
My wife was the second car going through an intersection on a green light when she got hit broadside. The guy was obviously going through a red light. And the police were there before my wife got out of the car. You know, she was in shock and the whole bit. And the police went over and looked at the other fellow, and they came to my wife and told him that he was a quadriplegic. And he had been drinking, and he went through a red light and the whole bit. But they're not going to do anything about it. They said they were just going to drive him home and told my wife to drop the whole issue.
How long ago is this?
That was about a year ago. And I went down for the next
You
two
telling me the truth?
Pardon?
Are you telling me the truth?
Yes, sir, I am.
Does the ICBC report show that?
Well, they showed the accident.
Where was this?
That was at 49th and Victoria.
Police said, don't do anything about it, we're just going to drive her home.
Yeah, well, they drove the man home because, you know, they said he was in no state to drive home his own car because he had been drinking. He's a quadriplegic and the whole thing. And he said,
You're telling me the truth.
yes, sir, I am.
Have you any documents on this case?
Well, just the ICBC reports because I went down to the police.
Does the ICBC report show that? Was your wife fully compensated for the accident, no questions asked?
Yes, we just had the car fixed, and that was all that was done. I went down to the police, and they said, don't bother laying charges, because I wouldn't stand up in court against a quadriplegic. You know, I would be looking ridiculous, you know, trying to charge a quad.
A policeman told you that? He might have got a suspended sentence. He might have had his license lifted.
No.
If he wasn't charged, he wouldn't have his license lifted.
No.
And I don't care whether they've got one leg, two legs, or three legs, or four legs.
Well, that's
You don't
right.
want people who are drinking driving cars.
Yeah, I said if he's qualified enough to drive, and he's qualified enough to take all the.
He's qualified enough to face a charge.
Yeah, but no.
Look, let me have a copy of that. Would you give your number off the air to Linda in place of Vancouver Police Department and tell me you're talking a bunch of lies?
Okay.
Linda, I'm not going to use your name on the air, but I want my own insurance policy on it by having you to stand up behind what you said on the air. Hold on.
Fine.
Break with Webster.
Minutes for this segment.
Last time I was tackling the Vancouver Police, much to the annoyance of some of them, was when they were getting preferential rates from the towing companies as police officers. We stopped that nonsense. Or rather, the police stopped that nonsense. But the publicity helped them to have enough backbone to stop the nonsense. Where's this from? Castlegar?
Yes.
Long way away. Good morning.
Morning, Jack. Jack, I haven't been in Vancouver since 1975, and starting July of this year, I started getting parking tickets for over parking at a metered space on 400 Block Nelson. 6 of them and 2 summonses to appear in court.
Hey, listen, you'll be arrested on the spot if you enter Vancouver. Mind you, you can beat up somebody in the streets and they won't arrest you, but for that, there'll be a bench warrant out and you're dead.
That's what I'm afraid of, and I've written to...
How would you like to send the correspondence to me with photostats of the tickets? How many tickets have you had?
6, I got another 4 in the mail in the last 4 days for some...
Have you told them this?
I've written to them, I've phoned them, I've sent it to the action line, and I'm still getting them.
Well, the action line's pretty good. Maybe they're overloaded. Send it down to me and I'll phone the police department or whoever's responsible and say, please don't arrest this fellow. He didn't beat anybody up on the streets. In fact, it's not even his car that's on the streets.
Right, I checked with the mounted police here, and they found out that it belongs to a woman in West or North Vancouver, and they told me that in 3 minutes flat.
Well, don't forget, it's not so long ago since they were tearing up all kinds of parking tickets that were handed out, but they didn't collect the money on them because of some computer fuff-up or something.
Talking to you, I can get the address from your girl.
BCTV, Post Office Box 4700, Vancouver, BC. V6B4A3. Just Jack Webster, Vancouver will get me, but best if you put BCTV on the envelope. Okay?
Thanks kindly.
All the best. Much obliged. Jack Webster, BCTV, Vancouver. Trail. Go ahead from Trail.
Previously, before living out in Trail, I lived in Vancouver for 3 years, and never before have I ever seen such a city with the highest per capita of tow trucks in that city as compared to other Western Canada centers.
They're standing there poised to get you.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. It really is. It looks like a major money-making operation. And I know you didn't want to hear that it looks, well...
No, I don't want to hear that. I'm not going to make that assumption at all. That would be most unfair. And it's not true. Go ahead, please.
Oh, hello, Jack. You just stated that things have changed at the BC Police Department, or the Vancouver Police Department. Don't believe it. I had the same thing happen to me about this change mix-up 6 years ago.
6 years is too long ago. We changed it yesterday, thanks to the program.
Jack, it hasn't changed. Listen to me.
It was 6 years ago you're telling me about.
Yeah, but the same thing happened. Something happened to me, and they didn't. They told me that there was a shift change, and this was an arrest of somebody that was going around gaining entrance to homes from BC Hydro, and they had a description in the paper, et cetera, and they said don't let him in, you know. And I went to my door, and this fellow that answered this description was standing there and wanted entrance to my home. And I asked him for ID, and he had none, and I wouldn't let him in. But I had a living room in...
Don't tell me anymore. It was 6 years ago. I'm sorry to know what happened then. Go ahead, please.
Good morning.
Morning.
Jack.
Good morning, ma'am.
I like the way you call people nonsense with common sense, because fact is in a nonsense, and common sense is in a logic. So, policeman, if he has all facts, he has no logic to support him.
Thank you, ma'am. We'll let that one lie where it sits. Go ahead, please.
Good morning, Jack.
Morning.
I work in various parts of Vancouver, and a week ago, I had my car parked right out behind where I work, and I have my car broken into and several things, about $600 worth of stuff taken out of it. Now, it happened within 20 minutes of being in the car. And I walk up to a policeman who happened to be just inside the door where my car was, and he turns around to me, and his exact words were, just phone it in. Now, there's 4 policemen in the building.
Wouldn't take the report then and there?
No, he just turned around. He wasn't talking to anybody, wasn't doing anything, just standing there, turned around and said to me, phone it in.
Well, they've got a thing called team policing, and in the early days of team policing, I know that many of the men were most unhappy with it, and your calls were stacked up on the list, and they were dealt with in a routine order, unless it was a priority of some kind, so probably he didn't want to take on an unscheduled appointment.
Well, the thing was, the car had been broken into within 20 minutes of talking to the officer, because I had just been out to it.
I don't regard that as terribly serious. Maybe the policeman was having an off day, as we all do at times.
Well, I think 4 of them standing around and just talking to each other is
You
not an
didn't
off
complain.
day.
You didn't write to the chief, did you?
No, I didn't.
You should have done. That's what you should do. Let them know if you're not happy. Go ahead, please.
Hello.
Yep.
I would like to tell you, Jack, that what police can do when judges are dumping even the murder cases.
When judges are not convicting murder cases, well, you can't say that judges don't convict if there isn't evidence. There are juries, and there's evidence, and if the Crown makes a botch of it, and the guy has to be acquitted even if he's guilty, that's the way the system works. You can't get into that area and make any sense on it at all. Go ahead, please.
Mr. Webster.
Yes.
On this laying of charges, I know the opposite side of the fence, where the police can act, I think you used the term probable cause or something like this.
Probable belief in cause or something like that.
Right, yeah. We had an incident with our son at the beginning of this year down here in White Rock, where he was out with a friend in the car. They got out of the car and parked it, and there was this lane going through a housing project, and this friend of his that was driving the car observed this shed garage away from a dwelling that was open. He went to it, and he went in, and my son went in to get him out, realizing that they shouldn't be there. And while they were in, the owner of the property away had drove up in a station wagon. and they had only been in there a couple of seconds. Nevertheless, he caught them there. They ran off, and...
What happened?
Well, okay, they had to go back to get their car, and when they did, the police arrested them and charged them with B&E with intent.
And tell me, did the complainant sign the information, or did the police lay the charge?
We went down to see him with our son to apologize for his being there, and probably scaring them. We realized many things that could happen.
Right.
And he told us that he didn't want any complaints signed. He had told the police this. He said, I realized it was young boys, and I figured that a good talking to...
But the police insisted to lay the charge?
They did lay the charge.
Without an information being signed by the complainant?
Well, they responded to a call about these boys being there, but as the man said, all he wanted to do was to scare the living hell out of them, and he figured that would be sufficient.
Did they appear in court?
No, we had to go to court, and the case was put off a couple of times, and after about $840-some-odd in legal fees, the charge was dropped.
Now, you see, the other side of the coin in Vancouver is a clear-cut case, obviously a prima facie case for a charge, 1 of assault and 2 of hit and run. And what happens? The police say, we're not going to lay the charge. You wanted to go to court, you sign the information. And I think that's wrong, 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 except in certain cases, as in some kinds of, I'm not talking about brutal rape cases, and some kind of family disputes, and some kind of unsubstantiated where the police say, look, there's no evidence here really. If you want that to be processed, sign the information. And then the JP, after you sign the information, the JP has a very important function. I remember it happening in the guy who wanted to charge Trudeau with assault at the Seaforth Armories a number of years ago. You go down and you say, I'm Joe Blow, I'm Jack Webster, I want to charge so-and-so with such and such. Sign the information. Put the information up here. Then the JP has to decide, will a summons be issued? Is it enough? And the JP is authorized to hold his own little hearing. He decides. In the Trudeau case, he decided not to accept the charge, which was a very proper decision, because I was around that affair that very evening. But here we've got the Vancouver Police, apparently in conjunction with the prosecutor's office, setting up this, to me, unsatisfactory system, whereby if you are assaulted on the street and somebody hits you with a tow truck, they won't do enough of investigation to lay the charge, which they should have done in this case. Whether the guy's innocent or guilty is up to the courts. There is no charge laid, and there will not be one laid.
Well, I think in this case you were looking for something this morning on your program that would kind of counter the action that had been taken, and I think that our own experience is exactly what you were looking for.
I was indeed. Had this man been charged Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I wouldn't have touched the story with a barge pole. Thank you very much. Break. Break, 1 short telephone segment, and then my guest. One thing I don't want to see is a return to the old tow truck capers in the city of Vancouver. They did more damage to the police image and, to the police image. They suffered more from the bad image caused by the tow truck caper. And they better see it doesn't start growing up again. I almost said, where is Wasserman when we need him? He was the one that whipped them into line on that on many an occasion. Tow truck companies and the police. Go ahead, please.
Hello there, Jack.
Yes.
You were talking about that hit and run.
Yeah.
Well, this procedure of you going down and filling out forms and that's been going on since I've come to Vancouver about 5-6 years ago.
I know it has, and I accept it in certain cases as a proper device to protect and not waste police and prosecutorial time. In certain cases, not in all.
Yeah, because...
I wonder what happened if you're killed. Did you come back from heaven to sign the information?
And I got hold of the guy took off, and my wife seen a cop about a block away parked in a car. We went, told him. He said, well, you got to go down, fill out an action report, a form.
Fair enough.
So I did it, and I told him it was hit and run, and I had the guy's license number. I went home, I phoned them, they said, oh, we didn't look into the hit and run because you didn't fill out a hit and run form. So I had to go back and...
When was this?
But by the time they got
was, you know, I'm going to get that guy. So I, upon reaching my destination, I went to the RCMP office and I said, you know, this is what happened, da-da-da-da-da. And he said, okay, sign here. And they went and picked the guy up and questioned him. And
That was a proper case where you had to sign the information because you and your wife were the only witnesses.
Yes. Now, I can understand it has to be that way because otherwise I could just go in and say, oh, this guy tried to do this and this guy tried to do that.
Not when there are two policemen on the spot who'd speak to independent witnesses. A passerby was so outraged by this when he phoned the police, not the complainant, then the woman to whom I spoke, and then the complainant himself. I just don't want them to dodge the responsibilities. I think a police officer with all his experience, if he's allowed to, is much better after he's done his investigation of assessing whether or not a charge should be laid. And I'm willing and always have been willing to give policemen that discretion. As a matter of fact, I think policemen have a better, experienced policemen have a better sense of discretion in laying criminal charges than many of the young lawyers in the regional Crown Council offices. Because they've been around, they know the score. They're not yet still wet behind the ears.
Yes, but can they take a person's word?
That's the result of an investigation. I know whose word I can take and whose word I can't, and thanks very much. I've got to close that off now because I have a guest here who's been waiting overly long. Man, I want you to meet. His name is Homer Seguin. Not bad. The area representative of the United Steelworkers from Sudbury, Elliot Lake, Ontario. After this break.
Yeah.
Free smoking, that's all right.
Smoking a pipe, though.
We'll have an ashtray. Free smoking, sir, you can have an ashtray. He can't have an ashtray because he's not allowed to smoke. He doesn't smoke.
You can see. I apologize to those callers whom I cannot now take. Homer Seguin is the area representative, area staff rep for the United Steelworkers of America in Elliot Lake. And he's regarded by many important people, medical and scientific community, as the layman with the most knowledge of industrial cancer problems or uranium mining. Homer, you know, I don't even like to talk about cancer, far less anything else, but how come you finished up as a lay expert on industrial cancer problems in relation to uranium?
Well, I've been always active in the field of safety and health, having worked in the plants myself and suffered some of the problems associated with the conditions. And when I went to Elliot Lake, there was a great hue and cry with the incidence of cancer that were developing within the community. The government reports indicated levels of 3 times the national average showing up in the community. And of course it was associated with the radiation in the workplace, in the mines. Elliot Lake's the uranium capital of the world. And I started doing some worldwide kind of studies in order to identify the problem so you could find the solution. And that's why I've done a lot of studying of you know, its effects, its control, and so on and so forth.
Identify the problem so you can find the solution. Is there any solution? Or is the solution merely to stop mining uranium and let the nuclear plants go to pieces?
Well, I would think that they have not found the solution at the present time. There's a tremendous amount of research required if there is a solution. And I personally think there is no 100% solution.
I presume things like proper ventilation, good health care all help.
They all help, and the new concept of thinking, and it's forever changing. In the last 5 years, the scientific community has changed its viewpoints about what the hazards are and the levels of those hazards. Well, you know, when I first went to Elliot Lake, they identified the government had a standard of 12 work level months per year of radon daughter exposures. That's now down to 4. Obviously, they were in error.
Of what exposures?
In those days, it was 12 work level months. That's a measurement of radon daughter emissions. It doesn't reflect the calendar month. You could get that in 1 month, or you could get that in 5 years, depending on the levels in the workplace.
And the human being is only safe if he only receives a maximum of those technical amounts of radon.
Radon daughters.
What?
Radon daughters.
What are radon daughters?
Well, they're the product of uranium decaying, and the daughters themselves attach themselves to dust particles. And so in uranium mining, it's very important. The dust is equally important as the radon.
Well, let me ask you a very simple question. If you had a son, maybe you have.
I have a son, yes.
Would you put him down a uranium mine?
No, I would not.
Just as simple as that.
That's right.
Why do the United Steelworkers continue, therefore, to work in these hazardous conditions in Elliot Lake and probably elsewhere?
Well, in Elliot Lake, it's somewhat a different situation. These steelworkers are striving, in part of my job, to improve the situation. If you go back, 1955, they found Elliot Lake in the bush.
Right.
And it was really built for the Cold War. All of the uranium produced in 1955 went to making atomic bombs, or a great portion of it. And then there was a great bust when there was no war. So the uses now are for nuclear energy. And there's a community, and there's thousands of people dependent on it. It's a little different, and also in Ontario, there's 33% of the hydroelectric energy is now nuclear. They have not got water, excess water to develop, which is the cheapest, it's renewable. BC does. So there's a different...
33% of Ontario's energy comes from nuclear sources?
The hydroelectric, yes.
So therefore, if you people don't work in the mines, and who runs these big mines in Elliot Lake? Inco?
No, it's Rio Algom in Denison Mines.
Rio Algom. If you don't run these mines, and there were no more whatever you need for nuclear plants, Ontario would lose 33% of its hydroelectric output.
It would.
So you're stuck mining there.
Well, in that sense, that's the kind of decision you're faced with. The alternatives are to go to coal, of which the cost of it, I understand, is 700% more costly. And then you get into coal miners and the hazards of mining coal. And you get into the pollution generated by the plants. So you have different kinds of decisions to make in various provinces. In the steelworkers policy in Canada, which was recently expounded just a month or two ago in great debates at our national policy conference, is a policy that there is no safe solutions at this, no technically known one, that it's a very hazardous operation, uranium mining, and that those provinces that in fact don't need it, don't make a conscious decision.
If you don't need it, don't do it.
Shouldn't do it, at least until you got guarantees of safety.
But take British Columbia right now. Oh, first of all, I should ask you, going 55, your people and the companies began to mine uranium at Elliot Lake.
Right.
Big operation.
It was a big operation.
How many then, how many now?
Well, it bloomed in 55 to 60, about 25,000 people in the community, and there was 15,000 workers that went through the uranium mines with the turnover. It dropped, the community dropped to about 6,000 people in the bust. And it's back now in the area of 20,000 and heading for in the 30,000s.
Because of the boom in peaceful uses of nuclear energy, I presume.
That's right.
And I suppose the economic factor forces and attracts people there without much option.
Well, with the high degree of unemployment, at one time it was very difficult to get workers. The high degree of unemployment, the companies are getting people that, after you're a year on Pogie and you've got to eat, they come. They come with some cautions and concerns.
But they come. Now, can you give me the kind of history of a miner who's been around there since it was in the boom years of 55, 56? Can you say with almost certainty that that man is going to suffer something from exposure to the underground effects of uranium mining?
To be perfectly honest, I couldn't say that with certainty. There are other hazards in the Elliot Lake area. We have a tremendous amount of lung problem people, not just cancer. They may develop cancer. There are a tremendous amount of dust-affected silicotics. The silica dust is also radioactive. But there's so much unknown about it. We've been striving for years just to have the government and the companies, they used to say, there's no hazards, there's no problem at these levels. And then it's recognized. It was only in 1974 that the provincial government recognized that radiation causes cancer, has caused it in uranium mines. In 1974, there was a 3-week safety and health strike by the miners in which the Ham Royal Commission on Safety and Health in Mines was generated from. And he identified all kinds of government company hiding you know, hiding the working conditions, the effects of the working conditions from workers. And if you know, a worker that sees a piece of loose in the mine, he won't walk under it. But the radiation is invisible. And the only radiation they first said there was a problem was radon daughters, which attached itself in dust particles and you had to breathe it to do harm. Just 2 months ago, after years of struggling, the Atomic Energy Control Board has acknowledged that there's gamma radiation problems, which can cause all kinds of cancers. It penetrates right through your body, like the X-ray. And they have identified, quote, Atomic Energy, significant levels of gamma radiation in the uranium mines. And only last week, just last week, I got a letter about thorium daughters. Thorium is more radioactive than uranium. And since 1955, there's been no recognition of those two hazards until just as late as last week. Now, their radiation hazards are cumulative. And many of the homes in Elliot Lake, we uncovered, the federal government has spent $3 million trying to eliminate the radiation in the homes of the community of Elliot Lake.
Were these homes built on excavated material from the mine areas?
In some cases, yes, the so-called waste rock of the mines. You know?
And so there you are living in the house with this radon gas coming through the floor.
Some levels of radon in the houses were discovered to be higher than in the mine.
Question, not to be clear, I mean, I'm very impressed. If I'm living on the top of an area, like in British Columbia, where there is natural uranium, and I don't even know it when I build my house there, you know, maybe in some valley, I won't suffer effects as serious as you do exposed underground.
You could.
Or can you tell me?
You could very well, because the radon, you see, in the homes are not constructed with ventilation. Ventilation takes the daughters away. You can have very minute quantities of uranium or thorium, construct over them, and the gases pass through the cement construction through pipes or sump holes or right through the walls, and they build up higher than its source. The daughters can build up higher than its source. And it's a 24-hour explosion situation.
They kind of breed by themselves, you might say.
Well, no, but the gas can, because it's not ventilated. You see, the gas gets in and it builds up. It's like a small leak.
Is there any answer?
Well, it requires a hang of a lot more concern of government. I'm talking provincial, federal, and companies, and some real very conscious decisions of people whether they want to even get involved in that, whether they have to. In our policy, for example, in BC, the steelworker policy is that BC has an excess of water power, which is renewable. Do you want to go into that particular concern?
Oh, I'll give you my answer now. No. Webster and Homer Seguin, area rep for the United Steelworkers from Elliot Lake, Ontario, after the break.
Portion
we'll
of
go with
January.
this.
I got on the property. We are also.
Yeah. You have to only a call when you get back.
I will.
My daughter Jennifer in Kamloops might even give me a praiseworthy phone call after today's program, because she's one of these people in the interior of British Columbia. While she's not on the doorsteps of the potential uranium deposit, she wants no part of it. Now, is she being emotional and sensationalizing the problems? I mean, I tend to think, here we are in British Columbia, they're drilling a few holes to see if there's uranium in the ground. So what? I'm wrong, am I?
No.
I'm wrong. She's right.
If they repeat the history of Elliot Lake, you know, there's a tremendous amount of tailings when you mine uranium. As a matter of fact, the tailings are twice as much as the ore that you mine after you break it.
We're not talking about processing now, we're talking about mining.
Yes, and it affects the environment. For example, in Elliot Lake, 55 miles downstream of the mines, leading into Lake Huron, the Joint International Commission has identified that Serpent River that flows into Lake Huron as the greatest single polluter of radiation to the Great Lakes. That's 55 miles downstream, and you know, X number of streams and lakes.
Yeah.
10 lakes in Elliot Lake have disappeared. They are now radioactive tailings. The entire watercourse where, you know, not all of the lakes, but all of the lakes where the streams flow from lake to lake down are devoid of aquatic life. And that's the legacy of mismanagement and of the tailings now.
Lack of knowledge. You'd grant them lack of knowledge in the beginning, perhaps, would you?
There was a lack of knowledge, and there still is a tremendous lack of knowledge.
But there's
However,
no lack of the knowledge, the fact that it's a highly dangerous operation.
there's no lack of that. And there's no lack of criticism of the government. For example, they got approvals to put tailings in lakes. And the government is supposed to lay charges if you dump sewage in the lake.
Just a minute. Are you telling me these 10 lakes that are now no longer lakes were filled with tailings?
That's right. They've disappeared as lakes.
They were trucked into there.
No, the mining companies pumped them from their milling operations, and the easiest place is holes. You know, they put them in the holes. Well, the lakes are the holes, or valleys. The water flows through this. See, first of all, the tailings give off radon gas, and it surrounds into the community. When they dry out, they blow radioactive dust, you know, in the surrounding area, and then the waters leach from the tailings radium-226, which flows into the watercourses. Now, there are all kinds of other impurities.
Now, you're telling me that even in a well-managed uranium operation with today's knowledge and full cooperation, we'll presume, from the companies and the governments, with special guidelines for safety, you're still going to finish up having to put these damn tailings somewhere.
There's no alternative. We had an environmental assessment board hearings in Elliot Lake for 2 years. We were advocating very strongly that the underground stowage, first, you can only put about half back. Second, you're not too sure about you know, if they're going to stay there. But the mining companies and the government, the Atomic Energy Control Board, were not in favor of this because, you know, they mine what they can make profit. Like they cut it off at about 1.5 pounds grade, because that's a profit. But as the price goes, they want to mine the rest. So they don't want to put the tailings back.
Wherever possible, they high-grade it.
That's right.
And high-grade it from the tailings, which the tailings might meet a bigger market demand.
Right, and you know, when you mine uranium, usually it's associated with thorium, which radioactivity is even worse, and other radioactive elements. Well, they put that in the tailings. So you have radioactive elements in your tailings, which leads to both to the environment and to the watercourses.
Position. Are you going to testify to the Bates Commission here?
Yes, I will be in Worker and Public Health, which is currently scheduled January 7th.
For January 7th, 1980?
Yeah.
It's not that far away. And what is the policy of the Steelworkers Union in British Columbia in relation to any uranium mining?
The Steelworkers policy in British Columbia, because of an excess of water energy and the unknown hazards, is that they're against the development. You know, why go to uranium production when the cheaper renewable energy is water, and you haven't exhausted that supply yet?
Your recommendation to British Columbia, therefore, is don't touch it.
Not unless there's guarantees of complete safety.
All right, supposing Ontario, which is presently being squeezed like a melon by Lougheed, the blue-eyed Arab in Alberta, supposing Ontario can't get uranium anywhere else except from new deposits in Canada. Well, you say 33 1/3% of all the hydroelectric output comes from nuclear power.
In Ontario, yes.
In Ontario. Elliot Lake will run out one day?
It will, yes. Life expectancy is about 30 years.
After that, they'll be looking for other deposits in other parts of Canada to feed the Ontario hydro.
Yes.
Do we do it or do we not do it?
I would think that we have to put a tremendous amount of our energy and resources towards the development of renewable energy, such as solar and tides.
Can uranium mining ever be safe for the individual?
I would think that you'd never get it to the point of safe. However, they haven't even touched the surface of knowing all of its hazards or what it really does.
All right. If I was 1955, when did the mine open in Elliot Lake?
Around the first ones were 1955, 56.
That's from 79, so that's what, 24 years?
Yeah.
If I had been a miner in Elliot Lake in, say, 55, 56, for more than 20 years, what are my chances of being in good health today if I've been underground 20 years?
I would think that almost anybody that's been underground 20 years at Elliot Lake has lung disabilities, and perhaps other disabilities that are not recognized yet.
But what I'm saying is you're not able to give me a breakdown of the number of men who worked there and who got cancer.
No, what happened, you see, because of Elliot Lake, is when they had the big workforce and then the bust, there were only about 500 people that stayed. And one other thing about getting the statistics, I think that although they've said three times the national average, they haven't got the picture. For example, just 2 months ago, I dealt with a case of a worker now living in Portland, Oregon. Okay, they're scattered all over the world.
Yeah, I had a guy who phoned me from Mackenzie on the last program saying he'd worked for 10 or 16 years at Elliot Lake and now had lung cancer and wasn't collecting compensation.
Most of our cases are showing up from elsewhere. That person left Elliot Lake in 1964. And he came down with oat cell cancer, which is recognized as radiation-induced. He hasn't been subject to radiation since, but there's a latency period. You get the effects of the rays now, and you don't know what's going to happen to you. You've seen some people die from other causes.
Next question.
They don't show up.
Next question for steelworkers or union men watching. If you picked up my guy from where, I think it was Mackenzie, or it may have been Kitimat, and he now has lung cancer. Was that right, Linda? It was lung cancer, wasn't it? It was just a phone call we had one time a while ago. Can he now come back to you and you go to the Workmen's Compensation Board in Ontario and say, here is a man who served X years underground in Elliot Lake, we want a compensation board pension for him. Would he get it?
In all probability, he would, but they've got a restrictive criteria. The one in Portland, Oregon, we've won. We launched his case, we won. I've never met him. I've dealt long-range correspondence basically with his daughter because he's dying. And as a matter of fact, I understand he's in real bad shape now. Mm-hmm. But we will certainly take up their case, and we have established a significant number of cases of people, left in the 60s. But those were the high exposures, and this latency period comes in. You can go in the mines today. You don't have to worry about the next 4 or 5 years, except that what you get today is what gives you the problem tomorrow. Mm-hmm. And these are the kinds of concerns. And at the new low levels, working conditions, we've really improved them as far as amount of radiation. But the new theory of the experts is that low-level radiation will cause the same effects, only it takes a few more years.
Mm-hmm. You would concede, though, that there will be natural parts of the environment where you may pick up this kind of bad influence, but it won't be anything like as concentrated as Elliot Lake.
No, if you go into areas to mine, there's another concern which we've identified in the homes. You have to then build, associated facilities and maybe even communities in that area. You build those communities on top of the area where there's uranium, even though the uranium where you're building the homes is not mineable because it's not profitable, you suffer the chance of getting radiation in your homes. Very distinct. We've got special ventilation techniques in the homes in Elliot Lake. Half the homes, or 40% of the old homes, have had to have special remedial work. The federal government, we've pressured them into spending $3 million. Every home in Elliot Lake being built now is built with amendments to the labor code that require stringent building requirements to prevent the entry, or there's ventilation built into the home to suck the radon out.
Paid for by the government, hopefully.
In lots of the cases, yes, and the others by the mines. But when people have to do that too. They have to build more expensive homes because of the radiation control that you have to build into it.
So what you're telling me is that your advice to British Columbia, by and large, while you accept the necessity of continuing to work some of your force in the uranium mines in Elliot Lake, that we should never get involved if we can possibly avoid it.
That's right. That's what I would say.
Well, very impressive, Homer. Are you speaking at any public meetings here at all, or just steelwork?
No, I've come up to assist in some of the preparation work that they're involved, and I will be back periodically to provide whatever help I can.
My very grateful thanks. I'm sorry I squeezed the last 20 minutes. Knowing now what I know, I'd maybe have given you a little bit longer, but you certainly impressed me. And give my regards to my old buddy, Bill Mahoney.
My pleasure.
Is he now retired?
He's retired, yes.
As the president, the top man.
He was the national director of the Steelworkers.
My thanks to Homer Seguin, area rep from Elliot Lake of the United Steelworkers of America. After the break. Ever. On uranium. So much more effective than having some goddamn university.
Yeah. The layman approach is easily understood.
I didn't get the name of your friend.
That's Keith Graham. He's the safety director, safety and health, BC Fed. That's why I laughed when you made the remarks about the BC Fed a while ago.
Oh, well, yeah, we couldn't comment. Ask any of the old timers. That's Charlie Johnson. Is it Charlie Johnson?
Thank you very much. Thank you
very much. What was his name?
Very nice meeting you there.
Homer. Very grateful. And don't forget, give Bill a call if you get a chance to call. Certainly will. Tell him I was asking.
exactly.
He's BC Fed now.
Halloween again.
He's BC Fed now.
Nice to meet you, Keith.
Okay, important.
Thanks again, Homer.
They
It
have
was very
30 or 20?
20.
You have
20 seconds.
exactly.
Just stay right there.
It's Halloween.
It's a very heavy morning this morning.
It sure was.
Are you going out tonight?
Only in disguise. Hockey game tonight.
Good. Good.
Yeah. What else for tomorrow? 10 seconds only. 9, 8, 7, 6. What do we don't know yet, do we?
Big surprise.
Big surprise.
Yeah.
Linda, we'll surprise you tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. precisely.
That's good.